Hi and welcome back to Bike Speeds. This week we are going to transform this early Giant Defy. Really enjoyed this video. We made this bike safe where it was dangerous. We're changing cables and we're doing some detailing work. We're going to clean this one right up, re-lubricate everything and really get this bike working nicely. New chain, new cassette and so on. This is a new rider to the world of road cycling, and the first thing he's going to do when he hits this brake is he's not going to have full braking power because that lever is touching the handlebar there. You can see that right there. Quite dangerous in itself, but coupled with this loose saddle here that's at a funny old angle and very loose, he's going to have an almighty amount of problems with this bike the first time he rides it. And as you can see, the chain is fully worn out, so this one needs a chain and a cassette along the way. He's bought this bike as a used purchase, and initially you would look at those three problems there and think, oh my word, why did he buy this? But actually, underneath this bike is a cracking bike for starting your road cycling experiences and hobby. This is a great sort of bike for a beginner. So you can see here the cassette itself is well lubricated. It's quite dirty and messy, but I am going to replace that because of the way the chain was worn. I think it would be prudent to do that at this stage, especially with a new rider, so as he gets a really nice shift, which sometimes through a stretched chain and worn cassette you don't get. You can see here the derailleurs themselves. They've been well oiled. They're not dry. They're quite nice. You can see here again how the oil goes black. That's because it's still quite moist, so that's quite good. But this front derailleur was actually seized when the bike came in. It wasn't changing gear, it was stuck in the second ring. But it wasn't because the derailleur was seized so much as the cabling and one or two other issues with the bike. You can see here the chain set is a triple, quite classic in nowadays. You don't see many triple chain sets on road bikes, but it serves a purpose perfectly for this rider to get into road biking. We're going to get everything off this bike, so I'm even going to take off the brake calipers themselves. I'm going to clean all those up, get them all through the ultrasonic cleaner, get them re-lubricated so they're operating correctly and nicely, especially with this bike with a few issues it had, to really make this feel like a new bike. And he will have the new bike experience with this one. Again, you can see here how the debris and dirt on that is a little bit darker. Again, it shows lubrication, so I'm quite happy with the way this bike is sitting. But this was the reason the front derailleur wasn't changing gear properly. You can see this huge little kink in the front derailleur cable there that is creating a huge problem with the shifting. So I'm going to replace that cable on the front derailleur. So we're taking that out of the handlebar first, and then I'm going to take all the components apart, get them in the ultrasonic cleaner, get them nicely cleaned up before re-lubricating them. So initially I'm going to take the jockey wheels off. We're going to pop everything that we want to clean into the ultrasonic cleaner. So I've got 6 litre ultrasonic cleaner there. Pop everything in, run it through there for a bit of time, and then I will just wash it down here with warm water, warm soapy water, get that degreaser off of the component because it will carry to work its magic after we've lubricated it, which is not what we want. We don't want to thin out the lubricants we put on these components, so it's important that we wash that degreaser off, which is what I'm doing there. Even things like the skewers, I'm going to wash those down, all these little bits and pieces. The chain set itself, we didn't actually put this through the ultrasonic cleaner because it wasn't too bad, and also having that black anodizing on there is a risk there with the ultrasonic cleaner as to how that would react when it's a much older part like this, so we just wash that one down. Now I'm using our premium grease on the derailleur jockey wheels themselves, get those nicely lubricated up, a little bit of Loctite 222 in the rear derailleur axles just to stop those unwinding themselves when the bike is being used, make sure they're bonded in there nicely. You don't need a super strong bond on those, so the 222 is perfect for that. And then I'm using our copper grease on the thumb adjuster. When was the last time you saw a thumb adjuster that had been greased up? But they're used regularly through the life of a bike. You don't want those seizing in the derailleur. I've seen an awful lot of those seized in derailleurs. So again, the lubricating process of those would help my servicing moving forwards, and my adjustments as well, to make sure this bike operates correctly. A nice thin lubricant there, our general purpose oil on the pivot points. And again, on this front derailleur, I was quite liberal here with the oil that I used on those pivot points because this was slightly seized when it came in, but having gone through the ultrasonic cleaner, that's now working perfectly. And then this one, I'm using our silicone grease on the slider there of the brake. You'll also see me use the silicone grease further down the service, so even that is quite important to be in our arsenal of greases. Grease up this quick release skewer. They have a tendency to rust inside the axle of the wheel, so I like to make sure they're right. Now while it's on the bench, can see here how the torque settings on these bolts are slightly loose, so we're just going to torque up this chain set to make sure that's nice. And then the other issue this bike had was that the headset bearings were worn. I could feel those very much when I was turning the handlebars. They weren't nice, so we're going to swap those out. And you can see here that rust forming on the front edge there is actually rust from the balls inside the bearing, and that has seeped out of the seal and has started to run down the side of the bearing. A classic example there of how headset bearings show when they're worn. Not only can you feel them, but you can see that rust coming out of there. So I'm going to clean up the cups and clean up the steerer tube itself to check those to make sure everything's safe and okay before we put in our new bearings. So I do just put a little bit of grease on the cups and stop some creaking and odd noises that you can sometimes get when you put bearings into a bike. So I just make sure that everything is nice and clean and smooth. And then also here, a little bit of silicone grease. There's actually an O-ring inside this cap, so it will help it pop over the top and slide down that steerer tube. Lining up the Giant logos on there as well with the stem, so that everything looks nice when you're looking down your steering. And next up, I'm going to deal with this back wheel. So I'm going to wash this right through. Again, warm soapy water, nothing more needed, but it's enough that you can check the integrity of the wheel, clean it all up, check the spokes. On goes the spoke protector itself, a little bit of grease on the hub. I like to do that to stop the cassette itself corroding between the cassette and the hub, so that next time I can get that off quite easily, torque that up to correct setting. And then I'm also going to rotate this tyre so that the valve itself is in the centre of the logo of the tyre. Aids for checking and finding punctures, and also it's aesthetically pleasing. When I give this bike out, it looks nice because both tyre logos are over the valve, so they're in the same place on the wheel. It lines up logos on the wheel as well as the tyre, and it's just a nice way of presenting the bike. So inflate that one there, inflate both front and rear tyres, make sure that the valve caps are okay and not damaged so that they stay on the bike. And then I'm going to wash the bike off. Warm soapy water, our big softy brush. So we are going to be doing a discount code. We're going to be trying this for our first time this year on our website, so check out the link in the description below. I'm going to use the discount code HOLIDAY10 for Black Friday and for the Christmas period. So if you fancy ordering something off our website, we're going to be putting that on the greases and the vinyl frame protection stickers, which you'll see me using in a moment on this frame. So do use our code HOLIDAY10 for Black Friday and the Christmas period this year. So this is what we're talking about with the vinyl stickers. You can see here we've got a little bit of chipping and damage on this rear seat post stay. So we're going to use one of our vinyl protection stickers. We cut these out and you can see you get an A4 sheet with various sizes and shapes. They're perfect for this sort of small detailing work on a bike, and also to stop frame rub from cables and things on the front steerer tube. We've got a little chip here on the front steerer tube, so we're going to use one off of one of our red sheets. So we'll pop that on there. That would protect that from getting any worse, any corrosion between the layers, and take your eye off of the damage. Next up, we're using one of our beautiful super slick cables on the front derailleur. Again, they're on our website if you want to buy those. You can see that the handlebar tape itself had unraveled, very common on road bikes. So we're going to actually address that. We're not going to replace it. There's nothing wrong with this. It just needed rewinding, tightening back up and finishing again at the end there. So there was no need to replace that. I'm just going to tidy that up as part of the service. If he fancied new tape on there in the future, he can have that done at a later date. He had this mirror on here. He actually asked us to remove this, so we are going to remove that for him. Pop a new cap in the end there, and then these handlebars are now ready to ride. Next up, we're going to start putting the components back onto the bike. So I'm starting here with the chain set. I'll tighten that up, then I'll also torque this, so that's torqued up correctly now. Same on this side. I like to do that on the front chain rings and chain set, and also the front derailleur, so that everything on that front derailleur is set to its final position, so that when I do my adjustments, I know that if I was to then torque up that chain set, I'm not going to pull it in further and make the adjustments incorrect. So we're popping the front derailleur on, the new cable, everything torqued up, and I know that front end is now correct. We also had a little bit of drag on the outer of this rear cable there. It wasn't smooth when we were pulling it through that cable, so I'm actually able to replace that outer. Sometimes these will fray off when I try and do this and you have to replace the cable, but in this instance they didn't. Now that's lovely and free on that cable, so that's going to give us a much more positive shift on that rear end there. So just check these the radiator hanger bolts to make sure they're tight enough and everything's correct there, and then we'll pop on that cable, nip it off to the correct length, put a new end on there, and now I know that that rear is also going to be okay. A little bit of copper grease on these threads here, doesn't hurt, stops that bolt binding into the frame. And actually the components on this bike were lovely, everything cleaned up nicely, there was very little corrosion, everything worked perfectly after we finished. I actually really enjoyed doing this service, so I hope you're enjoying this service too. We do read all the comments in the comment section every single week. Me and Simon, between us, if we spot one that we feel the other one needs to know about, we'll chatter away about the comments. We really enjoy that aspect of the channel. I don't always mention it, but if you are a regular commenter, we do notice, and we do have our favourite commenters as well. So please do drop a comment in this video about what you think of this service, and maybe mention what your first road bike was, what brought you into the road biking scene, because this is this customer's first bike and he's going to thoroughly enjoy this one. So we've put a new chain on there. It's a silver chain, as we call it. It's a lovely positive chain for an 8-speed drivetrain like this one. We check all the gears are working, everything's working smoothly. Check the brakes, make sure that those pads aren't binding on the rim itself. Once that's complete, and you can see here, that's no longer touching the handlebar. It's got a lovely positive brake now, so that brake is now safe where it was unsafe when this bike came in. So I'm quite pleased with that. But look at this, look, the brakes themselves, the hoods are loose on the bars, so we torque that up, and we'll now work our way through this bike with a torque wrench, making sure that everything is spot on. Everything is to manufacturer specification. Everything about it is absolutely as it should be. Basically go through the handlebars, the hood, the brakes, the chain set, the pedals. And we also noticed here another dangerous thing which we didn't initially notice. There was a missing bolt on this seat post here. Again, very dangerous. So we're going to pop one in there, a replacement, nice stainless steel one with a little bit of grease on there just to stop the corrosion. Wind that in, torque that up, and it's gone from one bolt, which was actually only really gripping the seat post, to 2 bolts which grip the frame and the seat post. And this saddle here, we've got funny angle on it, it's moving around. I would think that probably it's been slid undone and someone's pushed it forwards and knocked it down to try and finish a ride. But I'm going to reset this to a central position here, because this rider is new, so he hasn't got a position that he will favour at this stage in his cycling. So I've reset that to the centre of all the adjustments, level and true, torque to the correct setting, and then I run through the remainder of the bike. I also do things like check the accessory bolts here. Again, I do those by hand so as I don't over tighten them. But as you can see here, the subtleties are in the details on this one. It wasn't hugely dirty, but now it's absolutely spot on. There were a lot of loose nuts and bolts, a lot of minor details with this bike that needed addressing to make it safe and secure, and moving forwards this is now absolutely perfect. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Do check out our website, the link is in the description, using our discount code, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.